Welcome to the Succeed Against the Odds podcast. My name is Francesca Anastasi, also known as Sabea. I'm a multi-passionate entrepreneur. I'm your host and mentor. And each week we bring you an inspiring person, an expert, or message, and some behind the scenes to help you ignite and unleash your potential. Thanks so much for listening. Welcome back to another episode of the Succeed Against the Odds show. Today, as my guest, I have here Carl Gould, who is a worldwide leading authority on business and entrepreneurship. Welcome, Carl.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I am thrilled to have you here on our show because you are like a super expert on this topic. Carl, can you just share with us, just for those who may not know who you are, what is it exactly that you do?
Cool. So I'm a business coach, advisor. My firm, 7 Stage Advisors, is known as a growth advisory firm. And we work with small to mid-market businesses and the divisions of large companies in order to show them how to get to the next level. But I also started my career as a life coach back in the early 1990s. And so, I kind of coach on both sides of the fence. So that's a bit of my story.
Now, I've read about you, and you started multi-million-dollar companies. Can you share a little bit about that? Were they companies that you started for yourself, or were they companies that you started and helped other people with?
A little bit of both. In the beginning, though, these were businesses I started for myself. So, for example, my first business was a landscaping company. And the way that business got started it was actually a little bit by chance. I was going to school learning accounting and finance at the University of Delaware, and I had a bad leg injury in my second year, and I was forced to leave school. And so after 6 months of traction in a cast, sleeping on my mom's couch at home, out of money, I think your story was you were in the basement. I would have loved to have been in the basement because it was nicer, but I couldn't climb the steps. So I was on the middle floor of the house, sleeping on a couch, and I needed to earn some money after a while, and I realized going back to school wasn't possible for me at the time because my scholarships and grants, they all run out, if you're not in school for 6 months. So I started a landscaping company because that's what I knew. I did that all throughout high school, and I also grew up in the construction industry. So I started that business. That business doubled every year for 6 years, and then I sold it, and then I started a real estate development company. I had that business until 2004. I sold that business as well. But I started my first 2 companies for myself. And then in 2002, I started the company that I have today, which is the growth advisory firm.
This is very fascinating to me because you started with landscaping and then construction. These are all what, typically labeled as blue-collar type of jobs. What led you to go from real estate to becoming a coach?
Well, people say to me, they'll ask me, well, what does landscaping and construction have to do with coaching, and how does it prepare you for that? And nothing, really. They're so totally unrelated. But back in 1990, I went to a personal development seminar by Tony Robbins, and I really loved the idea of personal performance, peak performance, helping people set their goals and achieve their dreams. And I said, man, I want a piece of this. And so I became a professional coach in 1991 as a part-time hobby and passion. So, I did that all through the 90s. And then in 1996, I hired a business mentor to work with me on my business. And if there were hashtags at the time, our hashtag would have been hang up the hammer, because I was still very active in building. And, that was our mantra. And I spent the next 5 years working with him, and I positioned my construction business for sale, and then ultimately sold that. And then I started coaching full time. And that was really cool because I had to figure out a way to make coaching a full-time profession. Because even today, the average coach makes $23,000 a year. The average full-time coach makes $78,000 a year. And, I'm married and I have 3 children. You can't live on that, and you can't be the primary breadwinner on that. And it was worse back then. So I had to figure out a way where I could make coaching a full-time business, just like being an accountant or an attorney. It just didn't exist back then. The business, the way that it's formulated now just wasn't like that. There wasn't podcasting and you didn't have all this technology. It was just, blocking and tackling, getting a client, coaching them, getting the next client, coaching them. And I had to figure out a way to make that into a robust enough business.
Well, certainly I totally get everything you're saying there, because I know a lot of coaches and I know a lot of them are struggling. And it's so nice to see someone like you who's gone through starting from landscaping, number one, just backtracking. I find that very inspiring that you started in a field that was completely unrelated and you just kind of evolved to a point where you found something that was completely different than what you were doing before. And now you're very successful at it, which gives so much hope to people who may not be happy doing what they're doing right now and feeling that maybe it's too late for them. But you just proved that you can do something completely different and be successful at something that may be challenging at the same time, like coaching. So thank you for sharing that.
Oh, you're welcome. When I told people that I was considering getting out of construction, which was a successful business, and going into a field that nobody had heard about, nobody really knows anything about, and if you did any research on it, you would be hard pressed to find anybody who was doing it in any way successfully. They would have told, they said, "You're crazy. What are you thinking?" And I just said, I've got to do what I love to do. I've got to be able to enjoy what I do, and I don't enjoy what I do. I love what I do now. I mean, I'm totally jazzed by it. I don't feel like I've worked a day in my life since I started doing the work, and I was committed. I said, you know what, I'm going to make it work no matter what it takes, and I was able to do that, lucky enough. So it was a challenge, but I enjoyed it.
So for those coaches who may be listening right now and go, okay, Carl, what was the magic potion? What is a magic potion? What's the secret of your success? What did you do differently than most coaches do that's made you successful?
What I did in the beginning, I'll just walk you through what my path was. So when I decided I wanted to become a coach, I said, well, nobody knows who I am. So I don't have a personal brand right now. I don't have intellectual property. I don't have a methodology, none of that. And so I attached myself to other methodologies. I got certified by Tony Robbins. I took Ken Blanchard's situational leadership. I learned Dale Carnegie leadership principles, Franklin Covey, time management, and other professional tools. And I started to get certified in these various methodologies. And so I became a certified coach in some cases for their organization, but I also was certified to utilize their toolbox. And so I leveraged other people's intellectual property until I created my own. And then in 2007, I collaborated on a book with Stephen Covey and Ken Blanchard. I've since written 7 other books. And I also created a coaching methodology that I've trained over 7,000 coaches in 35 countries on to show them how to increase their coaching skills, but also build a 6 or 7 figure coaching practice. So the path is attach yourself to somebody else's IP, then work your tail off. I've done 25,000 coaching sessions to date, and then go back out to the marketplace with your own idea of how you would service your clients and your own products and programming, and then go from there.
Now you have the 7 stages of small business success. Is that part of the coaching, or is that what you do with the actual businesses?
That's a little bit of both. It is part of the coaching, but it's business strategy. So back in the 90s, I was doing, in my coaching, I was doing a lot of DISC assessments, a lot of personality assessments. And I started to realize that the personality of a business is mirroring the personality of the owner. In other words, if the owner was totally schizophrenic, he'd say, Carl, or she would say, Carl, I'm all over the place, have no organization. And I'll say, okay, I get it. Tell me about your business. The business is all over the place. And we have no organization. All right, okay, I see that. And then I get on the phone with a very organized person, and they would say, yeah, my business is very organized. It had its strengths, but every strength has its mirror, right? It has its corresponding blind spot. What I found was that the personality of a business will mirror the personality of its owner, and that gives every person and every business a set of strengths and a set of blind spots. So if I could identify your strengths personally and your blind spots personally, I would then know where I could push you to for peak performance, and also what areas that we'd have to work on in order to fortify some of those weaknesses and blind spots. And so I created this diagnostic model that with a few questions, I can understand, what your strengths and blind spots are, and then help you make dramatic improvement very quickly.
What are the 7 stages?
So the main rule is you have to go through, you can't buy your trophy. You've got to earn your way through each of the stages. The only stage you can't stay at, the second rule, after that, no more rules. Second rule is you cannot stay at stage 1, because at stage 1, you have no paying clients. So I'm going to have to assume that everybody listening wants at least one paying client. And then from 2 through 7, you're totally cool. So here they go. Stage 1 is called the strategic planning stage. That's when you get the great ideas out of your head and onto paper. You need to be able to answer these 2 questions to make your business compelling and inspiring. What is so compelling about my business that a competitor's customer would be willing to leave them and come to me and pay more? And also, what is so compelling about my business that an employee would be willing to change geography and come and work for me and earn less than what they do now? That's stage 1. Stage 2 is the specialty stage. At the specialty stage, that's when we say an expert or an authority is born. And that's when you become the expert in your field. And you're going to need that, because you're going to need to be able to increase your fees as much as possible. And then stage 2 is the arena of the self-employed as well. If you stop, the business stops, which is fine. If you love what you do, great place to be. Stage 3 is synergy. And synergy is where we build our team. You're doing such a good job. You're such an expert. So many people want to work with you. You say, gosh, I need more work. I've got to duplicate myself. I need to be able to delegate these things to people. All right, super. And so you build your implementation team at stage 3. Stage 4 is the systems stage. And that's when you look at every area of your business, you document it, and you start to build an ecosystem. You start to build your company's kind of blueprint for success. So Apple is a stage 4 company, as an example. Stage 5 is sustainability. You are sustainable because the systems have taken over. They have become the star, and you are now known for something other than your product or service. Your systems are so good that they are leading you to other areas of success that are not part of your core products. So if any of you that are listening out there know the answer, just blink once and I'll know you got the answer right. Fill in the blank here. And if you watch the movie The Founder, you all know what it is. McDonald's is the greatest blank story in history. Thinking. You got it. Real estate. If you watch the movie The Founder, they realize they're not just in the burger business. They're in the real estate business. So their systems got so strong that they were able to find the top real estate in the world. And they are, I believe, privately held. I mean, the Catholic Church, the monarchy set those aside. Government set that aside. But privately held, I believe, they're the #1 real estate holder in the world.
Wow.
Right? Think about this for a second, Francesca. Imagine I told you we're going to start a restaurant. We're going to be the biggest restaurant chain in the world. We're going to have 40,000 locations. And we're not going to have any chefs whatsoever in any restaurants. And we're going to kill it. How would you feel about that if I came to you with that idea? You'd say, you want me to do what? 40,000 locations worldwide, and they don't employ any chefs in their restaurants. And they're a restaurant. No, you say, oh, well, they just do burgers. Well, burgers are still food. They serve food, and there's not a chef in any restaurant because their systems are so good that they don't actually need a chef in any of the restaurants. They have them in their central location, but they don't need them at their restaurant. That's how good their systems are. Stage 6. Stage 6 is the saleability stage. And that's when an asset is born. And if you remember way back to stage 3, we said that you are building your implementation team. Stage 6, you are building your management team. So you're making sure that you have a VP of sales, a director of marketing, and a VP of operations. So somebody that's not you drives all the leads, converts those leads to sales, and then fulfills the orders. If you have that, you are building an asset that will run without you. And if you're wondering, hey, what about finance? The beauty of the gig economy that we are in today, there are many highly trained financial experts that you can use as outsourced solutions. But if you're going to sell your business, whoever buys you wants to know you've got those other three items well in hand. And then the last one is stage 7. And stage 7 is the succession stage. Oh, you're going to like this stage. If you thought you liked the McDonald's story, Francesca, you're going to love stage 7, because at stage 7, you get to fire employee number 1. Guess who that is?
Yourself.
Yourself. Absolutely. The day that you do it, the value of your business rises because you have such a strong management team in place. So the stage 7 is when a legacy business is born, and you're there when you announce the new management team, and the marketplace is so excited that the value of your business actually rises because you put such a good team in place. So those are the 7 stages. If you follow that trajectory, we say that you can go from startup to 7 figures in 3 years or less. If you are already in that arena where only 4% of businesses are $1 million or above, and you're saying, you know what, I've plateaued a little bit. I still have to increase things here, and I've got to get back on that track. We see businesses grow and turn around in 18-month cycles. So you'll get your footing over the next 18 months, and then you'll take off from there.
You're saying that from start to, let's say from stage 1 to 7, that takes about 3 years?
Well, you actually don't have to go to stage 7 in order to become the business you want to be. Any business from stage 4 through 7 can be equal in size. So stage 7 does not dictate the size of the company, just how it's run and the dynamics of it. But we say that you can become a $1 million business or above in 3 years or less.
Carl, would you say that the 7 stages apply to any type of business?
Oh, absolutely. We've used this methodology with over 75,000 companies in 35 countries since 1991. We didn't write the 7 stages and then hope it worked. It is the result of the data that we have generated from all of the companies we've worked with everywhere. And we are working with companies all around the world right now that are utilizing this. So yeah, this is no theory here at all.
I love it. So much gold in this information. Do you ever use your name as a pun? Because it's perfect.
When I was a landscaper and we were really growing, I used to go to this one supplier, and they used to call me Carl Gould. I was like, oh my God, he's back again? So yeah, or 24 karat Gould, that was the other one somebody used. So we've had some fun with it.
It works, so it's all good. Now, you have a book coming out called The Anatomy of a Comeback. Tell us about that.
That's right. So I chronicle the story of Chuck Getchell, who's a serial entrepreneur who fell on some hard times. And the comeback story is Chuck's comeback story, and I provide the anatomy. And so we wrote this book a few years ago. Chuck has successfully turned things around. It is normally you can write a book in 6 months. This was a 5-year case study. So we wanted to make sure that when we launched the book, Chuck's entire story was told. And it started out where he was in such a tough spot that he went to go to a dog shelter to adopt a dog, and they would not allow him to adopt the dog. All the way now to he's got a very successful company. But the anatomy of a comeback is there are 4 parts: break in, break through, break out, and break away. Break in, meaning take inventory. What got you to where you are today? You didn't get heavy overnight. You didn't get poor overnight. There were a series of events that led to you where you are now. So get honest with yourself. Break in, take inventory, and say, all right, what's my responsibility here? And what did I do to get myself in this position? Then you got to break through, meaning you've got to do something radical. You've got to make a shift and change the course permanently and burn the bridges of what of what the patterns were that got you in there in the first place. So so if you're trying to lose weight, you throw out all the food that's unhealthy in your house. If if you're not with the right crowd, you respectfully tell them I love you and I got to find a new crowd because you become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time around. Then break out is you've got to create a plan. You've got to do this on paper and you've got to share this with people. You've got to announce your intent. You've got to tell your community. You've got to ask them to hold you accountable. And you have to, going back to that stage 1, strategic planning, and that plan's got to be compelling. I remember in 1996, I'm sitting in a personal development seminar and I had my construction company. And although successful, I was miserable. I just didn't like it. And I remember saying my plan was I was going to be paid to play all around the world. And I had no clue what that meant at the time. But I was going to be paid to play all around the world and I was going to figure that out. So I spent the next 10 days and I wrote out a plan of exactly how I was going to do it. And I decided on that day I was going to build a business in an industry that barely existed. Certainly didn't exist the way it is today. And then break away. You break away from the pack by doing the little things every single day that no one else is willing to do. You do what they're not willing to do, you will get what they don't have. So those are the 4 elements of the book. It just came out. I started to do some publicity around it and it's getting some really nice feedback.
Where can people get the book?
Yeah, right now you can get it on Amazon. There's also a website called anatomyofacomeback.com. Go on Amazon, look up The Anatomy of a Comeback by Carl Gould and Chuck Getchell, and you'll find it there. And grab a copy of the book and tell us your story as well.
Carl, are you willing to share one lesson in business, all the businesses you've had, something that you've learned, just one thing that you could share with everyone? What was the biggest lesson for you as an entrepreneur?
So one of the biggest lessons I learned just from a personal standpoint was I learned very quickly. I'm at the Tony Robbins seminar and he used to play this game, this fun game called Simon Says. Simon says, do this. And then if he says, do that, and he doesn't say Simon says, do that, and you do it, you're out. And I remember going through the game and I realized that I didn't do very well my first year. And then there were about 1,000 people there and I'm watching people play the game. And, once it gets to the top 20 people, they all come on to the stage and they battle it out. And then there's usually 2 or 3 people that are there at the end. And then he asks the group, he says, what was your goal? Write down your goal for the game. And I remember writing down, I wanted to have fun. And he said, did you get your goal? And I'm like, yeah, I did. I got my goal. I had fun, but then I thought about, well, it wasn't a lot of fun when I wasn't playing. It wasn't a lot of fun watching everybody else play. And I wanted to get closer to the end. And I remember he said, you've got to set the goal. And then the people who got on stage had the goal to get onto the stage, be the top 20. And then there were only, of 1,000 people, there were only a handful of people in the entire room that had the goal to win. And all the people that had the goal to win were on the stage at the end battling it out for the top prize. And I thought, wow, there's 1,000 people here and 5 people have the goal to win. And I realized the lesson I took from that was that number 1, the top spot, there's the least competition for. There's almost no competition for number 1, but there is a ton of competition for every other spot. And I thought, that's interesting. That's interesting. Do I go in the middle where there's all this competition? I certainly don't want to be last. Or do I go for first? And I realized if I go for first, there's the least amount of people that are trying to get there with me. And so any position in the marketplace is hard. If you're an entrepreneur, you know this stuff is hard and not everybody can do it, but not everybody will do it. So it's already one of the hardest things to pursue is to be a business owner. Only 1 in 15 people are entrepreneurs to start. So you have to walk into a room of 30 people before you even see a peer. Only 4% will ever get to $1 million. So that's 1 in 600 people. So you have to walk into a room of 1,200 people before you see a peer. This job is already hard enough. And that's if you're not even doing it well, it's hard enough. What if you want to actually be a success? You want to be a success, then I want the least amount of competition as possible. Well, if that's the case, the position I learned that has the least competition is number one. So I'm going for that. That's what I learned very early on. You hear it in a number of different ways, and it can become a cliche. Some people don't believe they can get it. Some people, don't think they deserve it. But the reality is, just flat out, you just have very few people that are even trying. And so most people just rule themselves out. And so go for number one. It's a lot easier.
Why do you think so few people go for the top or for the win?
There might be some extenuating circumstances too. Like you might start your business and you might be part-time and you say, well, that's great. I don't have the bandwidth or the finances, or I don't have the resources in order to get to be number one. That's fine. I understand that. And so not everybody shoots for number one, not because there's some sort of character flaw. There might be some real issues there, but to become the best, it takes the same amount of time to suck as it does to be great. So I suggest in today's day and age, where the platform of the internet will scale you faster than we've ever seen in human history, being the best can often also help you become the biggest, or at least get to that number one spot. And we live in an age where you can define your niche very easily. So I think a lot of it is belief and effort.
It all starts in the mind, doesn't it?
It sure does. It absolutely does.
Now, Carl, you have events coming up. Tell us about those.
So I've got I do a fair amount of speaking. I recently spoke at the $1 Million Women's Summit, and I recently spoke at a large entrepreneurial conference in South Florida. I've got a couple coming up, one in the fall. I'll be speaking in San Antonio at the Grow Conference, and I'll also be speaking in the Hampton Roads, it's called, but Virginia Beach, in the fall at a public event for entrepreneurs. And I'll be talking about biz dev done right, how to grow your business. And I have another one coming up called 5 Ways to Generate Revenue in Your Business in the Next 90 Days in Charlotte, North Carolina. But I also do a lot of private events and corporate events as well.
Well, Carl, you are definitely a wealth of information when it comes to business. If the audience wants to get in touch with you, where is the best place to reach you?
So carlgould.com. You can email me directly at carl@carlgould.com. And we also have that I'd like to extend to your listeners. We do something called a business analysis, which is up to a 2-hour growth strategy session. If you go to my website and just where it says contact us, and you just type in business analysis and give us your information, I'll make sure that you get a 2-hour strategy session with a growth advisor, show you how to take your business to the next level.
I'm going to ask you one last question that has nothing to do with business. When you were a child, what did you want to be when you grew up?
When I was a kid, I was convinced I was going to be the center fielder for the New York Yankees. I thought I was going to be a professional baseball player. Loved the Yankees. I was a huge fan, still am, huge fan. And I really loved playing baseball. So I always thought I would play for the Yankees in professional baseball. I was published for the very first time when I was 8 years old. I wrote a story about a family trip we took. So the second thing I thought I would do if I wasn't a baseball player was I'd be a writer.
And you are.
And so I am. Yeah.
Yeah. You've written 7 books, you said.
I have. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being here.
You got it. Talk to you soon.
Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please pass it on, and it would mean so much to me if you would leave an honest review on iTunes. I'd really appreciate it. Till next time, embrace your magnificence.